Welcome back, hunters, to Key and Seven Lore. Today we're venturing into the twisted streets of Yharnam to uncover the true terror that lurks beneath its blood-soaked cobblestones. While most players focus on perfecting their visceral attacks and memorizing boss patterns, the real horror of Bloodborne lies not in the beasts that stalk the night, but in the cosmic dread that permeates every shadow, every whisper, every drop of blood that flows through this cursed city. Picture this. You awaken on a cold operating table, your vision blurred, your body heavy with the weight of something foreign coursing through your veins. The good doctor tells you you've received a transfusion, that you've signed a contract, though you remember neither. As you stumble from that clinic into the gaslit streets of central Yharnam, you believe you understand your purpose. Hunt the beasts, survive the night, seek the pale blood. But this initial understanding is perhaps the greatest deception of all. What appears to be a straightforward gothic horror tale of werewolves and plague slowly, inexorably transforms into something far more disturbing, something that challenges not just your skill with a saw cleaver, but your very understanding of reality itself. The genius of Bloodborne's horror doesn't announce itself with jump scares or grotesque cutscenes. Instead, it seeps into your consciousness gradually, like the very blood ministration that defines Yharnam's culture. Every item description you read, every piece of architecture you examine, every NPC's cryptic dialogue contributes to a mounting sense that something is fundamentally wrong with not just this city, but with the fabric of existence itself. The beasts you fight? They're merely symptoms of a far greater infection, one that reaches beyond the physical world into dimensions our minds were never meant to comprehend. Today, we're peeling back the layers of this masterfully crafted cosmic horror. We'll explore how Bloodborne uses environmental storytelling and subtle narrative cues to build an atmosphere of dread that lingers long after you've turned off your console. We'll examine how the game takes inspiration from HP, Lovecraft's cosmic horror philosophy, the idea that humanity's greatest fear isn't death or pain, but the realization of our complete insignificance in a universe populated by beings whose existence renders our entire understanding of reality meaningless. The old blood's deception, from cure to curse. To understand the true horror of Bloodborne, we must first travel back to the discovery that doomed Yharnam, the finding of the old blood in the ancient Fumarian labyrinths beneath the city. This discovery wasn't made by the Healing Church, as many citizens of Yharnam believe, but by scholars at Byrgenwerth, an institution of learning led by Master Willem. Deep in the tombs that honeycomb the earth beneath Yharnam, these scholars found something that would forever alter the course of human history: the old blood, a substance of otherworldly origin that possessed miraculous healing properties. The initial experiments must have seemed like humanity's greatest triumph. Wounds closed instantly, diseases vanished, the dying returned from death's door with renewed vigor. Master Willem, however, possessed the wisdom to approach this discovery with caution. He understood that power of this magnitude came with a price, that humanity was tampering with forces beyond their comprehension. His famous adage, "Fear the old blood," wasn't born from superstition but from a scholar's understanding that some doors, once opened, can never be closed again. But Laurence, Willem's most ambitious student, saw only the potential. Where Willem counseled restraint and further study, Laurence saw an opportunity to elevate humanity, to cure all suffering, to transcend the limitations of mortal flesh. This fundamental disagreement would split Byrgenwerth and lead to the founding of the Healing Church, an institution that would transform blood ministration from a carefully studied phenomenon into a widespread practice that would ultimately doom the entire city. The Healing Church's rise to power reads like a masterclass in manipulation and calculated deception. Consider the timing of the Ashen blood outbreak in Old Yharnam, a devastating plague that appeared seemingly from nowhere, spreading through the district's water supply with terrifying efficiency. The symptoms were horrific. Victims suffered from debilitating weakness, their blood turning to ash in their veins, their bodies wasting away despite all traditional medical intervention. Then, at the moment of greatest desperation, the Healing Church arrived with their miraculous cure: blood ministration. Evidence strongly suggests this was no coincidence. The church didn't simply capitalize on a tragedy. Many researchers believe they orchestrated it. The Ashen blood disease bears all the hallmarks of a manufactured plague, one designed specifically to be incurable by any means except blood ministration. Create the problem, provide the solution, and suddenly you have an entire population dependent on your miracle cure. The residents of old Yharnam, desperate and dying, welcomed the church with open arms, never suspecting they were inviting in something far worse than any plague. The blood ministration process itself reveals the insidious nature of the old blood's corruption. Patients would receive transfusions of specially treated blood that had been refined through processes the church kept secret. The immediate effects were undeniably positive. Strength returned, wounds healed, vitality surged through weakened bodies. But the blood changed those who received it on a fundamental level. Their genetic structure began to shift, their bodies becoming increasingly dependent on regular transfusions. The church presented this dependency as a small price to pay for perfect health, but they knew the truth. Each transfusion brought the recipient closer to an inevitable transformation. The beast scourge, when it finally erupted, seemed to catch Yharnam by surprise. Citizens who had received blood ministration began transforming into savage beasts, their humanity stripped away as their bodies mutated into increasingly monstrous forms. The church quickly mobilized their hunters to contain the outbreak, presenting themselves as humanity's protectors against this unexpected threat. But internal church documents tell a different story. The transformation wasn't a side effect, it was an inevitability. The old blood carries within it a fundamental incompatibility with human physiology. Given enough time and exposure, every recipient would eventually succumb to the scourge. Yet the beast plague, horrifying as it was, served merely as a smokescreen for the church's true purpose. While the citizens cowered in fear of becoming beasts, while hunters stalked the streets in search of those who had transformed, the upper echelons of the church pursued their real goal: communion with the Great Ones. The blood ministration wasn't just healing the sick, it was preparing humanity for something far more profound and terrible. Each transfusion brought recipients closer, not just to beasthood, but to a state where their minds could perceive and potentially communicate with beings from beyond our dimension. The church's various workshops and research facilities reveal the depths of their experimentation. The research hall, hidden away in the nightmare, shows us rows of patients subjected to procedures that go far beyond medical treatment. Heads enlarged to grotesque proportions, bodies twisted into configurations that shouldn't be possible, minds shattered in pursuit of artificial eyes on the inside. These were the church's attempts to force human evolution, to create beings capable of ascending to the level of the Great Ones. Even the church's hunters, ostensibly the city's protectors, were part of this grand experiment. The blood they consumed to strengthen themselves for battle against the beasts was the same corrupted substance that would eventually doom them. Ludwig, the church's first hunter and greatest hero, ultimately transformed into one of the most horrific beasts ever witnessed. His transformation serves as the perfect metaphor for the church's deception. The very champions they created to protect humanity were always destined to become its greatest threat. The various blood types used by the church each tell their own story of corruption and experimentation. The blood of Ebrietas, discovered in the deepest chalice dungeons, became the foundation for the church's most potent ministrations. The blood saints, young women whose blood possessed unusual properties, were venerated and imprisoned in equal measure, their veins tapped regularly to provide specialized treatments. Queen Yharnam's blood, ancient and powerful, was reserved for the church's most secretive rituals. Each variant of blood represented another step away from humanity, another degree of separation from what we once were. The Great One's silent influence, beyond human comprehension. If the old blood represents the mechanism of Yharnam's downfall, then the Great Ones are the architects of its destruction, though architects implies a level of intentionality that may not exist. These beings operate on a scale of existence so far removed from human experience that their very presence warps reality around them. They don't need to actively intervene in human affairs because their mere existence creates ripples that fundamentally alter the world we inhabit. Understanding the Great Ones requires abandoning conventional notions of biology, physics, and consciousness. These entities exist across multiple dimensions simultaneously, their forms shifting and changing depending on the observer's ability to perceive them. They reproduce through dream and nightmare, communicate through madness and insight, and their children are often concepts rather than physical beings. The human mind evolved to understand a three-dimensional world governed by causality and linear time, simply cannot fully grasp entities that exist outside these constraints. Before you like and subscribe, which really helps the channel as we're pushing toward 1,000 subscribers, let's examine the individual Great Ones and their unique influences on Yharnam's fate. Your support means everything to this growing community of lore hunters, and hitting that subscribe button ensures you won't miss our deep dives into gaming's most intricate narratives. Ebrietas, daughter of the cosmos, represents perhaps the most direct interaction between humanity and the Great Ones. Discovered in the ancient Pthumerian labyrinths, she chose to remain in the physical world, taking residence in the grand cathedral's hidden altar. The healing church formed a covenant with her, using her blood as the basis for their ministration. But what did Ebrietas gain from this arrangement? Evidence suggests she wasn't helping humanity out of benevolence, but rather using the church as a means to search for something, or someone. Her mournful presence before the altar of despair, where she weeps over a petrified Ram, hints at motivations we can barely comprehend. She mourns not as humans mourn, but in ways that twist reality around her grief. The moon presence, controller of the hunter's dream, operates through manipulation so subtle that most hunters never realize they're pawns in its cosmic game. This Great One doesn't simply inhabit the dream, it shapes it, controls it, uses it as a mechanism to achieve goals that remain frustratingly opaque. Every hunter who signs the contract, every beast slain, every blood echo collected serves the moon presence's agenda. Gehrman, the first hunter, remains trapped as its surrogate child, forced to guide countless hunters through the same cyclical nightmare. The moon presence feeds on something generated by the hunt. Perhaps the blood echoes, perhaps the act of killing itself, or perhaps something more abstract that our minds cannot grasp. Odon, the formless Great One, might be the most insidious of all. Without physical form, Odon exists purely as influence, as voice, as concept. This entity's presence can only be inferred through its effects, the mysterious pregnancies that occur throughout Yharnam, the way blood seems to call to blood, the voices that whisper in the minds of those who delve too deep into forbidden knowledge. Odon seeks to reproduce through human surrogates, impregnating women with children that are neither fully human nor fully Great One. Ariana's pregnancy, Queen Yharnam's eternal search for her child, the crying of Mergot whose physical form may not even exist. All of these connect back to Odon's incomprehensible reproductive agenda. Ram, the vacuous spider, presents a unique case among the Great Ones. Once human, a student of Byrgenwerth who underwent a transformation that stripped away her intelligence but elevated her to the status of a Great One. Ram serves a crucial function. She maintains a barrier between the human world and the realm of the Great Ones, hiding the true nature of reality from human perception. Her existence raises disturbing questions about the nature of ascension. If becoming a Great One requires the complete abandonment of human intelligence and identity, what exactly are we ascending to? Ram's vacuous state might not be a failure of transformation, but its intended result. A being powerful enough to alter reality, but lacking the consciousness to question or resist its role. The Orphan of Kos embodies the rage and suffering of the Great Ones, a being born from tragedy and sustained by vengeance. When the scholars and hunters of Byrgenwerth massacred the inhabitants of the fishing hamlet and defiled the corpse of Kos, they created a curse that would echo through dimensions. The Orphan exists simultaneously as a newborn and ancient entity, its cries reverberating through time itself. Every hunter who enters the nightmare must face this embodiment of cosmic injustice, a being whose very existence is a testament to humanity's crimes against entities they had no right to harm. The amygdalae, those multi-armed beings that cling to buildings throughout Yharnam, demonstrate how the Great Ones exist parallel to our reality, visible only to those with sufficient insight or during moments when the barrier between dimensions weakens. These beings have always been there, watching, waiting, their purpose is unknown. They transport willing subjects to the nightmare realms, but why? Are they helping, harming, or simply acting according to motivations so alien that concepts like help and harm don't apply? What makes the Great Ones truly terrifying isn't their power or their alien nature. It's their fundamental incompatibility with human existence, combined with their deep entanglement in human affairs. They need humanity for reproduction, as most Great Ones lose their children and search desperately for surrogates. This reproductive drive doesn't follow any biological logic we understand. When a Great One impregnates a human, the result isn't a hybrid, but something entirely other, a being that exists partially in our world and partially in dimensions we cannot perceive. The influence of the Great Ones extends beyond the biological into the architectural and cultural fabric of Yharnam itself. The city's Gothic spires reach toward the cosmos not by coincidence but by design, each structure carefully crafted to channel cosmic energies. The statues that dot the city depicting figures with too many eyes, too many arms, positioned in poses that hurt to perceive. These aren't artistic interpretations, but accurate representations of beings the artist had glimpsed through blood-induced visions. Even the layout of Yharnam reflects the Great One's influence. Streets that seem to loop back on themselves, buildings with impossible geometries that only make sense when viewed from certain angles. The way the city seems to exist in multiple states, simultaneously depending on the time of night and the observer's level of insight. All of this suggests that Yharnam itself has been transformed into a kind of three-dimensional mandala, a physical space that serves as a bridge between our world and the cosmos beyond. Echoes of insight, madness, and ascension. Insight in Bloodborne functions as both a game mechanic and a narrative device that perfectly encapsulates the cosmic horror at the story's heart. Each point of insight represents a step closer to understanding the true nature of reality, but this understanding comes at a terrible cost. The human mind, evolved to process a specific range of sensory input and conceptual frameworks, begins to break down when forced to perceive truths it was never meant to comprehend. The physical manifestations of insight are documented throughout Yharnam's medical texts and research notes. Subjects exposed to cosmic truths experience a range of symptoms: severe migraines that no medicine can cure, visual hallucinations that might not be hallucinations at all, the sensation of eyes opening inside one's skull, and in extreme cases, complete cerebral hemorrhaging as the brain literally tears itself apart, trying to process impossible information. The research hall's patients, with their grotesquely enlarged heads, represent the Church's attempts to artificially induce insight, to force human consciousness to expand beyond its natural limitations. Master Willem's approach to insight differed radically from the healing Church's blood ministration. His famous maxim, "Fear the old blood. By the gods, fear it," was paired with another equally important philosophy: the eye grants us sight, but the inside eye grants us insight. Willem believed that true understanding of the cosmos required internal transformation, not external supplementation. The Garden of Eyes at Byrgenwerth, those grotesque fly-like creatures covered in human eyes, were likely products of Willem's experiments. Attempts to create beings of pure perception, capable of seeing across all dimensions simultaneously. As hunters accumulate insight through their journey, the world around them literally changes. This isn't merely a shift in perception, but an actual transformation of reality, or perhaps more accurately, a revelation of reality's true nature. At 15 insight, the amygdalae become visible, revealing that these cosmic beings have been present all along, clinging to buildings, watching from cathedral rooftops, existing in a parallel space that only becomes perceptible once the mind has been sufficiently expanded. The Church of the Good Chalice in the Cathedral Ward undergoes perhaps the most dramatic transformation. At low insight, it appears as a grand but conventional religious structure. But as insight increases, the cosmic horror beneath becomes apparent. The statues reveal their true alien geometries. The architectural proportions shift into configurations that shouldn't be structurally possible, and the very air seems to thicken with the presence of otherworldly entities. This isn't the building changing, it's the hunter's ability to perceive what was always there. The winter lanterns, those singing brain-headed monstrosities that cause frenzy merely by being observed, represent the ultimate danger of insight. These creatures are composed of messenger corpses fused with the brain of Mensis, and their very existence is an affront to human perception. Looking at them causes immediate mental damage because the mind cannot reconcile what it sees with what it knows to be possible. The fact that they sing a distorted version of the Plain Doll's lullaby suggests connections between the dream, the nightmare, and the waking world that are too terrible to fully contemplate. The path to ascension that insight promises is perhaps the cruelest joke of all. Throughout Yharnam, we encounter those who sought to transcend humanity through knowledge and transformation. The choir, the church's elite scholars, believed that the sky and the cosmos were one, and that by ascending to the highest peaks of the cathedral, they could commune directly with the great ones. Their experiments with phantasms and their attempts to create artificial great ones through the Celestial Emissary program show their desperate pursuit of evolution. But what does ascension actually mean? The living failures in the research hall provide one answer. Beings that exist in a state between human and great one, neither fully one nor the other, trapped in an eternal limbo of incomplete transformation. They possess power beyond human capability, but lack the transcendent consciousness of true great ones. Their failures not because the transformation didn't work, but because it worked too well, creating beings that embody the fundamental impossibility of human ascension. The school of Mensis took a different approach, attempting to use ritual and nightmare to achieve communion with the great ones. Their ritual, which involved using the body of Mikolash as a conduit and the collected consciousness of the school scholars as fuel, succeeded in making contact with Mergot. But at what cost? The entire school was pulled into the nightmare, their physical bodies mummified in their seats while their consciousness became trapped in an endless maze of madness and revelation. Mikolash himself represents the ultimate fate of those who achieve true insight. His dialogue reveals someone who has gained understanding of cosmic truths but has been driven completely insane by that knowledge. He speaks of eyes on the inside, of granting eyes to cleanse beastly idiocy, of the cosmos, of course. His words make perfect sense from the perspective of someone who has transcended human understanding, but to human ears they're the ravings of a madman. The tragedy is that both interpretations are correct. He has achieved enlightenment, but enlightenment and madness are revealed to be the same thing when dealing with cosmic truth. The relationship between insight and beasthood adds another layer of horror to the equation. Those who succumb to blood ministration without gaining insight transform into beasts, while those who gain insight without blood ministration risk madness. But those who balance both, who consume the old blood while accumulating cosmic knowledge, face an even worse fate. Transformation into something neither beast nor kin, neither human nor great one. The cleric beasts, Ludwig, and other church hunters who transformed represent this middle path, beings whose bodies became bestial while their minds retained just enough insight to understand their own damnation. Environmental storytelling, hidden horrors in plain sight. Bloodborne's environmental storytelling operates on multiple levels simultaneously, creating a narrative that exists as much in architecture and ambiance as in dialogue and description. Every street corner in Yharnam tells a story. Every piece of furniture placement has meaning, and the careful observer can piece together tales of horror that the game never explicitly states. The transformation of Yharnam throughout the night of the hunt serves as a masterclass in environmental narrative progression. Central Yharnam begins as a city in crisis, but still recognizably human. Citizens board up their homes, hunters patrol the streets, and while violence has erupted, there's still a sense that this is a temporary emergency that will pass. The burning crosses, the hanged corpses, the makeshift barricades all speak to a population trying to survive what they believe is just another hunt, perhaps worse than usual, but still within the realm of human understanding. But as you progress deeper into the city and the night wears on, the environment itself begins to break down. The architecture becomes increasingly non-Euclidean, with staircases that lead to impossible spaces and doorways that open onto vistas that shouldn't exist. Yharnam, the unseen village, exemplifies this deterioration. What initially appears as a hidden district reveals itself to be a space where reality has become completely unstable. The cramped streets give way to massive ritual chambers, the sky burns with an unnatural light, and the very stones seem to pulse with malevolent energy. The research hall stands as perhaps the most disturbing example of environmental storytelling in the entire game. Every floor tells a different chapter in the church's descent into madness and cruelty. The lower floors show relatively conventional medical equipment, suggesting this began as a legitimate treatment facility. But as you ascend, the true horror reveals itself. Patients with grotesquely enlarged heads wander aimlessly, begging for death or searching for eyes they'll never find. The surgical theaters become increasingly barbaric, with restraints designed not for healing but for keeping subjects alive during procedures that no human should endure. The garden atop the research hall, where the living failures conduct their endless ritual beneath the cosmos, represents the ultimate perversion of the healing arts. What should be a place of recovery and peace has become an altar to cosmic horror, where failed experiments attempt to commune with beings beyond the stars. The flowers that grow here are watered with blood and madness, their unusual colors and impossible geometries suggesting they're no longer entirely of this world. The fishing hamlet provides environmental storytelling that spans time itself. This cursed village exists simultaneously in the past and present, a wound in reality that refuses to heal. The architecture tells the story of a simple fishing community that encountered something beyond their comprehension. The houses are built at odd angles, not from poor construction, but because the villagers attempted to recreate structures they had seen in their visions. The wells that should provide fresh water instead lead to underground caverns filled with parasites that whisper cosmic secrets. Every corpse in the hamlet has been positioned to tell a story. Some reach toward the sea as if trying to return something they should never have taken. Others cower in corners, their bodies contorted in positions that suggest they died of fright rather than violence. The orphan's birth beach, littered with the corpse of Kos, serves as a grotesque nativity scene where the boundary between life and death, between mercy and cruelty, has been completely obliterated. The subtle details throughout Yharnam reward careful observation with horrifying revelations. The baby carriages scattered throughout the city, always empty but often surrounded by bloodstains, hint at something terrible happening to Yharnam's children. The fact that you never encounter a single living child in the entire city except for the fake crying used as bait suggests either a mass evacuation or something far worse. The young girl's questline, ending inevitably in tragedy no matter your choices, reinforces that innocence cannot survive in this world. The statues and religious iconography throughout Yharnam evolve as your insight increases. What initially appear as traditional Gothic religious sculptures reveal themselves to be depictions of great ones and cosmic horrors. The church's grand cathedral, with its seemingly Christian imagery, actually venerates entities that predate human religion by eons. The altar of Ebrietas, hidden beneath the main cathedral, shows how the church built their faith literally on top of cosmic horror, using traditional religious trappings to hide their true worship. The lecture building, transported wholesale into the nightmare, demonstrates how the pursuit of knowledge can literally tear buildings from reality. The fact that it exists simultaneously in the nightmare and the waking world, accessible through different means depending on your path, suggests that the building itself has become a kind of dimensional anomaly. The students and scholars within, transformed into slimy, grotesque creatures, continue their studies even in their corrupted state, suggesting that the pursuit of knowledge becomes a kind of curse that persists beyond human form. The hunter's dream, prison, or sanctuary. The hunter's dream occupies a unique position in Bloodborne's cosmology, simultaneously a safe haven and a prison, a place of respite and a mechanism of control. This pocket dimension, crafted and maintained by the moon presence, serves as the hub from which all hunters operate, but its true nature reveals one of the game's most insidious horrors. The workshop itself tells a story of cycles and repetition. Based on the original workshop in the waking world, now abandoned and decrepit, the dream version exists in a state of eternal preservation. Tools that should have rusted away centuries ago remain pristine. Flowers bloom eternally in the garden, and the building never shows wear despite countless hunters passing through. This isn't preservation through care, but through the suspension of natural law. Time moves differently here, if it moves at all. Gehrman, the first hunter, embodies the tragic nature of the dream. Bound to his wheelchair, forced to guide hunter after hunter through the same journey, he exists in a state of perpetual servitude to the moon presence. His moments of lucidity, when he begs to be freed from the dream, reveal that he's fully aware of his situation but powerless to change it. When he sleeps, he cries out for his mentor, Willem, and his companion Maria, relationships severed by time and tragedy. His offer to kill the player hunter, to free them from the dream, is simultaneously an act of mercy and the perpetuation of his curse. The plain doll, animated by the hunter's insight and will, raises disturbing questions about consciousness and identity. Modeled after Lady Maria, one of Gehrman's students with whom he was infamously obsessed, the doll serves as caretaker, confidant, and the mechanism through which hunters channel blood echoes into strength. But what is she really? Her capacity for emotion seems to grow throughout the game, and her reactions to various events suggest a consciousness developing beyond her initial programming. When she tells you she will remain in the dream even after the hunt ends, even if she's the only one left, the existential horror of her situation becomes clear. An artificial being created to serve, potentially conscious, trapped forever in a pocket of reality that may have no purpose without hunters to tend. The workshop's tools and weapons tell their own stories of previous hunts and hunters. Each weapon description hints at cycles of violence that have repeated countless times before. The hunter's mark, which allows return to the dream at the cost of all blood echoes, represents the ultimate safety net, but also the ultimate trap. No matter how far you venture into the nightmare, you can always return to the dream. But this also means you can never truly escape it. The messengers, those grotesque but oddly endearing creatures that serve the hunters, exist throughout multiple planes of reality simultaneously. They appear in the dream, the waking world, and the various nightmare realms, always eager to help but unable to communicate except through gestures and gifts. Their origin remains mysterious, but their devotion to hunters suggests they might be the remnants of previous hunters who failed in their ascension, reduced to servile creatures but retaining just enough consciousness to try to help their successors. The graves throughout the dream that serve as transportation to various locations in Yharnam reveal the non-linear nature of the dream's relationship with reality. These aren't just magical doorways, but connections to specific moments in time and space, allowing hunters to revisit locations that might no longer exist in the waking world, or to access nightmare realms that exist parallel to reality. The fact that some graves only become available after certain events suggests the dream responds to and is shaped by the hunter's actions in ways that imply either intelligence or programming of impossible complexity. The blood ecosystem itself, centered in the dream, represents one of the most horrifying aspects of the hunt. These echoes, the spiritual remnants of slain enemies, don't simply make hunters stronger. They fundamentally alter the hunter's being. Each level gained through the doll's channeling represents a step away from humanity and towards something else. The fact that dying causes you to drop these echoes, leaving them to be reclaimed, suggests they're not truly part of you, but rather accumulated fragments of other beings' existence that cling to your consciousness. The three endings, no true escape. The three endings of Bloodborne each offer a different perspective on the hunter's fate, but none provide true resolution or escape from the cosmic horror that permeates the game's universe. Each ending recontextualizes the entire journey, forcing players to question what they've actually accomplished and whether their actions have helped or damned humanity. The first ending, Yharnam Sunrise, occurs when the player refuses Gehrman's offer and then accepts death at his hands. The hunter awakens in the real Yharnam as dawn breaks, seemingly freed from the dream and the hunt. But this good ending carries deeply troubling implications. The hunter has no memory of the night's events, suggesting that everything they experienced has been erased or suppressed. They walk away from Yharnam, but the city's problems remain unsolved. The Blood Ministration continues, the Great One still influence the world, and another hunt will inevitably come. The hunter has escaped, but at the cost of abandoning everyone else to their fate. More disturbingly, this ending raises questions about the nature of reality and memory in Bloodborne's universe. If the hunter forgets everything, did it really happen? Or does the hunt exist in a kind of temporal loop, resetting with each dawn only to begin again with the next night? The fact that gravestones in the dream connect to different points in time suggests that linear causality might not apply to the hunt at all. The hunter might not be escaping, but simply exiting one iteration of an endless cycle. The second ending, Honoring Wishes, sees the hunter defeat Gehrman and take his place as the dream's guardian. The moon presence descends, embraces the hunter, and binds them to the dream just as Gehrman was bound. This ending reveals the true nature of the dream as a carefully constructed prison. The hunter becomes the new host, condemned to guide future hunters through their own journeys, knowing that they too will either die or replace their guide in turn. This ending transforms the entire game into a cosmic trap. Every action the hunter took, every beast slain and Great One challenged, was orchestrated by the moon presence to either feed its incomprehensible needs or to test and prepare a replacement for Gehrman. The hunter's strength and skill, built through countless deaths and resurrections, make them the perfect candidate for this eternal servitude. The dramatic irony is crushing. In becoming powerful enough to defeat Gehrman and win the game, the hunter has actually doomed themselves to a fate potentially worse than death. The third ending, Childhood's Beginning, achieved by consuming 3. Third umbilical cords and defeating both Gehrman and the moon presence, presents the most enigmatic conclusion. The hunter transforms into an infant, Great One, cradled by the doll as a new day dawns. This ending suggests successful transcendence, the achievement of what the healing church and Byrgenwerth scholars sought, evolution beyond humanity into something greater. But what has the hunter actually become? The transformation into an infant. Great One means the complete abandonment of human consciousness and identity. The hunter no longer exists as they were. Instead, they become something fundamentally alien to human experience. The doll's promise to care for this new being raises questions about what kind of entity will eventually emerge. Will this new Great One be benevolent toward humanity, or will it become another incomprehensible force causing madness and mutation in its wake? Each ending reinforces Bloodborne's central theme of futility in the face of cosmic forces. There's no heroic victory, no saving the world, no return to normalcy. The best-case scenario involves forgetting everything and abandoning others to their fate. The alternative paths lead to eternal servitude or a transformation so complete that it constitutes a kind of death. The game offers no comfort, no assurance that the player's struggles meant anything beyond perpetuating cycles of violence and madness. The ambiguity extends to what happens to Yharnam itself after any of these endings. The Blood Ministration continues, regardless of the hunter's choice. The Great Ones remain, their influence undiminished. The research hall's patients still suffer in their enlarged head agony. The fishing hamlet remains cursed. Nothing the hunter does addresses the root causes of Yharnam's suffering. the human ambition to transcend natural limitations and the fundamental incompatibility between human consciousness and cosmic truth. Legacy and lasting terror. The true horror of Bloodborne extends far beyond its narrative conclusion, seeping into the player's consciousness and fundamentally altering how we perceive not just the game, but the nature of horror in interactive media. Hidetaka, Miyazaki's deeply personal investment in this project. He stated that Bloodborne is the game that left the biggest mark on him, results in a work that transcends typical video game storytelling to become a meditation on knowledge, ambition, and the price of transcendence. The game's influence on the broader gaming landscape cannot be overstated. While the Souls series had already established a template for challenging gameplay and cryptic storytelling, Bloodborne pushed these concepts into new territory by wedding them to cosmic horror philosophy. The idea that gaining knowledge and power makes the game harder, not easier, with insight literally spawning new enemies and increasing their difficulty, revolutionized how games could approach difficulty and progression. Knowledge becomes a burden, understanding becomes a curse, and the traditional gaming power fantasy transforms into an existential nightmare. Bloodborne's approach to cosmic horror succeeds where many games fail because it understands that true cosmic horror isn't about tentacles and cultists, but about the breakdown of human understanding in the face of impossible realities. The game never fully explains its mysteries because complete explanation would diminish their power. Instead, it provides just enough information for players to construct their own understanding while ensuring that any interpretation raises more questions than it answers. This incompleteness isn't a flaw in the storytelling, but its greatest strength. The human mind's attempt to create coherent narratives from fragmentary information mirrors the in-game scholar's doomed attempts to understand the Great Ones. The community that has formed around Bloodborne continues to dissect its mysteries years after release, producing theories that range from meticulously researched archaeological expeditions through the game's lore to wild speculation that borders on the kind of madness the game itself depicts. This ongoing engagement demonstrates how effectively Bloodborne has colonized players' minds, creating a kind of real-world insight that keeps drawing people back to Yharnam's twisted streets. The game's treatment of religion and science as two sides of the same doomed coin offers a particularly nihilistic view of human endeavor. The Healing Church's religious approach and Byrgenwerth's scientific method both lead to the same place: madness, transformation, and the collapse of human society. There's no right path, no correct philosophy that could have prevented Yharnam's fall. The message seems to be that humanity's greatest strength, our curiosity and desire to understand, is also our fatal flaw when applied to forces beyond our comprehension. The personal nature of Miyazaki's involvement in Bloodborne adds another layer of meaning to its horror. His admission that this game contains more of his personal philosophy and worldview than any other suggests that the cosmic horror might be, in some sense, autobiographical. Not literally, of course, but as an expression of existential anxieties about knowledge, progress, and the nature of human ambition. The game becomes a kind of interactive philosophical treatise, using gameplay and atmosphere to convey ideas that would be less impactful if merely described. Bloodborne's legacy extends into how we discuss and analyze video game narratives. The game proved that players will engage with deliberately obscure storytelling if the fragments provided are compelling enough. It demonstrated that environmental storytelling can carry as much narrative weight as cutscenes and dialogue. Most importantly, it showed that games can tackle complex philosophical themes without simplifying them for mass consumption. The game trusts its players to grapple with difficult concepts and ambiguous meanings, refusing to provide easy answers or comfortable resolutions. The speedrunning and challenge run communities that have emerged around Bloodborne represent another fascinating aspect of its legacy. Players who've exhausted the game's content continue to find new ways to experience it, imposing restrictions that make an already difficult game nearly impossible. These self-imposed challenges mirror the game's themes of pushing beyond human limitations, of seeking transcendence through suffering. The player becomes both hunter and scholar, pursuing mastery with the same obsessive dedication that doomed Yharnam's researchers. Looking toward the future, Bloodborne's influence can be seen in numerous games that have attempted to capture its particular blend of action and cosmic horror. But most imitators miss what makes Bloodborne special. It's not just the Victorian setting or the werewolves or even the Lovecraftian monsters. It's the complete commitment to its themes. The way every element from gameplay mechanics to item descriptions reinforces the central ideas of knowledge as a destructive force and ambition as humanity's downfall. The question of a potential sequel remains a topic of fervent discussion in the community, but perhaps Bloodborne is perfect as a singular experience. Its mysteries are more powerful because they remain unresolved, its horror more effective because we never quite understand the full picture. A sequel might answer questions better left unanswered, explain mysteries that derive their power from ambiguity. The game exists as a complete thought, a fully realized nightmare that doesn't need continuation or clarification. As we reach the end of this exploration into Bloodborne's cosmic horror, we're left with the same unsettling questions the game itself poses. What is the price of knowledge? Can humanity transcend its limitations without losing its humanity? Are we alone in the universe? And if not, would we be better off if we were? Bloodborne doesn't answer these questions. It forces us to confront them, to feel their weight, to understand that some questions are horrifying, not because of their answers, but because they can be asked at all. The hunt never truly ends. Even when the console is turned off, when Yharnam's streets are silent and the Great Ones retreat to their incomprehensible dimensions, the ideas Bloodborne plants in our minds continue to grow. Like the eyes on the inside that Master Willem sought, once we've seen the cosmic truth Bloodborne reveals, we can never quite close those eyes again. The game achieves what all great horror aspires to. It doesn't just frighten us while we're experiencing it, it fundamentally changes how we see the world after we've walked away. This is the true terror of Bloodborne, the lingering unease that gives this video its title. It's not the jump scares or the grotesque boss designs or even the challenging gameplay that makes Bloodborne horrifying. It's the slow realization that the game's cosmic horror might not be entirely fictional, that our own pursuit of knowledge and transcendence might lead us down similar paths. Every scientific breakthrough that reveals how little we understand about the universe, every philosophical inquiry that questions the nature of consciousness and reality, echoes the themes Bloodborne explores. We are all citizens of Yharnam in our way, seeking answers to questions we may not be equipped to understand, pursuing transcendence without knowing what we might become. If you enjoyed this deep dive into the cosmic horror of Bloodborne, please like this video and subscribe to Cansive Lore for more comprehensive explorations of gaming's most fascinating lore and stories. Your support means everything as we work toward our goal of 1,000 subscribers, and together we can continue uncovering the hidden depths of gaming's greatest narratives. Remember, fear the old blood, grant us eyes, and may you find your worth in the waking world. Until next time, fellow hunters, this has been Cansive Lore, and the hunt continues.